What's happening, people? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to another episode of the Opposition Preview. And this weekend, Frank Lampard takes charge of Chelsea for the first time as caretaker manager when the boys travel up to Molineux to take on Wolves. Ironically, the last time Chelsea won at Wolves was back when Frank Lampard was in charge in 2020 and we won 5-2 in a cracking game at Molineux. So a repeat of that would be fantastic. But to be honest, any win and any amount of goals would do nicely for Chelsea right now because it has been a real struggle this season. But this is not about Chelsea, this video. This is about Wolves and the threats that they can pose and how their season's been going. So I'm delighted to be joined by Dave from Talking Wolves. Mate, thanks for coming on. Like Chelsea, Wolves have gone through a managerial change as well. Taking it back sort of towards the start of the season, mate, where do you think it went wrong for Bruno Lage?
Thanks for having me, mate. Yeah, it's strange, really, with for Wolves. Obviously, with the managerial change, after Nuno went and Bruno Lage came in, he sort of adopted the five at the back last year that Nuno had taken on, and started off really well, probably up until that the last sort of quarter of the season. We were in amongst the European places again. He'd started off really well defensively. We were so solid, but our main issue was scoring goals. Towards the end of the season, we slowed down, and I was hoping that we had a pretty immaculate preseason. To be fair, we swapped from a back five to a back four. He'd almost frozen out certain players like Connor Cody, which was obviously quite a big thing, who ended up going out on loan to Everton. So we started off the season with a back four, and although a couple of the performances were okay, we were just leaking goals and still having our same goal scoring issues, really. And we had a couple of really poor defeats. And in the end, he got the sack after we'd lost out to West Ham, and I think we were bottom of the table. And I think the club needed to let him go, but they didn't really have a plan in place. We had a caretaker manager in Steve Davis for a few games, and he did as well as he could. But still, I really hope there's not a couple of games that he was in charge for cost us at the end of the season. But it was just poor performances, and I think he was, changed formation. He lost a lot of big characters. Like I said, Cody went, Romain Saiss had gone, who was at the club a number of years. John Ruddy, although didn't play, was a big sort of voice in the dressing room, and I think he lost a few too many experienced heads at the same time, Bruno Lage, and ultimately that didn't help him. Tried to change things possibly a little bit too quickly, and obviously we are where we are now under Lopetegui, where things have improved, but still a long way to go, I think.
I mean, I look at it from an outsider's point of view and thinking like for Wolves to get a manager of the caliber of Lopetegui, who's managed Real Madrid and some big clubs in Europe, that's quite a coup for the club. I mean, were the fans pleased with that appointment and maybe slightly surprised as well? You were able to get a manager of his caliber. I guess that maybe shows the pulling power of the Premier League.
Yeah, for sure. It's an interesting one with Lopetegui because he's always been destined to manage Wolves, and I say that because when the club was first taken over by Fosun, who were the current owners, back in 2016, Lopetegui was the man that they had lined up to take over at the club, and we were in the Championship at the time, and the takeover took a little bit longer than expected, and he got offered the Spain job, and that's when he went to Spain because obviously, no disrespect to my own club, but if you're going to manage Wolves in the Championship or Spain national team, I think you know what the answer is going to be. And obviously we went our different ways, and both the club and him as a manager have gone on their own journeys. And it was almost sort of, one day I think both parties were going to come together again. Fans were really happy at the time. I think Bruno Lage had gone, and Lopetegui was really struggling with Sevilla. He lost his job about a week after Bruno Lage did. But he wanted to take some time out of football because his dad was ill. So I think Wolves' plan backfired a little bit. We'd gone for a couple of different options. Michael Beale was one who was at QPR at the time. He's obviously gone to Rangers now. And in the end, Lopetegui had come back to Wolves and said, "Look, I'm happy and ready to join the club." So yeah, we were happy. There weren't many top managers out there. A couple of the names that were bandied about were a little bit underwhelming. So I think we're happy to have an experienced name in charge.
I mean, do you think are you happy with the impact he's had as well? Obviously, as you said, when he took over, you were bottom of the table or towards that end. He's come in, he's picked up some good results, but then just recently in the last few games kind of slipped back into old ways, as it were, with some not so good results and getting kind of dragged back into the mix again. I mean, not that you were fully out of it, but you were pulling away. Now you're dragged back in. Are there real concerns that you could go down, or do you think? I mean, obviously you're never too good to go down. But I look at Wolves. I think there's some fantastic players, the likes of Neves, Moutinho, Nunes as well. Even like the likes of Adama Traore is pretty good. What's his name? Cunha, who's coming for big money from Atletico Madrid. Like, there's a decent players there. What are Wolves fans worried about? That there's a real chance you could go down?
There's definitely a concern there. You know, when he took over with 4 points adrift and bottom of the table, and very quickly he got us out of that mess. And you know, and I think we're sort of 13th, 14th right now in the table. And although that looks half decent, you know, we're only 3 points away from the relegation zone still. Fortunately, a lot of teams had games in hand and dropped points, so we're still in an okay position. But we really need to start getting some points on the board. And we've had opportunities to do that. Drop points against Forest last week, Leeds the week before, where we should have done a lot better despite the result. But unfortunately for Wolves, a lot of it is due to antics sort of off the pitch in the dugout. We've had bad luck with refereeing decisions, really. We lost out against Newcastle a few weeks ago, and there should have been a Stonewall penalty and probably a red card for Nick Pope at 0-0. Leeds, we got shafted a few times with poor refereeing decisions, but instead of sort of getting on with our football and letting the football do the talking, we've reacted. Lopetegui's got in a little bit of trouble. We've had loads of fines this season. So I think that's a frustrating thing. We're sort of not letting our football do the talking. And it was almost something that Bruno Lage brought in, actually. Under Nuno, we were very cool, calm. We just got the job done. Bruno Lage almost instilled this sort of, tried to get the dark arts into us a little bit more to try and grind out Premier League results. And I think that sort of spilled over to this Lopetegui regime as well, where he's just sort of almost arguing every decision, which is nice in a way because you're showing the passion, but at the same time, it can be a little bit frustrating. But there's definitely concern from Wolves fans, definitely concern. But it's in our own hands, really. We can't rely on other results. We just need to get the points ourselves.
Yeah, 100%. And it is in your own hands, and that's the best place for it to be, certainly. But in terms of the game on Saturday, mate, what players should Chelsea be looking out for? Who have been kind of Wolves' standout performers this season? Obviously, Ruben Neves, I imagine, is one, but him missing through suspension is going to be a big blow. But who have kind of been the standout performers this season? Players that Chelsea need to keep an eye on.
Yeah, like you said, Ruben Neves has been phenomenal again, and I'd be very, very surprised if he's a Wolves player at the start of next season. But I think probably similar to Chelsea, really. We've had players who have had good games, but not consistently, really. Craig Dawson came in January, sort of shored up our defence a little bit. Again, he's been a little bit hit and miss at times. Nelson Semedo at right back has had a slight improvement under Lopetegui as well. Young Hugo Bueno as well at left back. To be fair to Steve Davis, who was the caretaker manager, his sort of background with Wolves has been in the youth side of things, and he gave debuts to a lot of young players. And Hugo Bueno is one that has come in and never looked out of place at left back. So I think he'll be back, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him start on Saturday. The midfield, Nunes is one. I know you mentioned him. He's so frustrated at the moment because you can just tell watching him, he's a phenomenal footballer, but we just haven't seen good performances from him so far. So I'm really just waiting for him to put in one of those top performances that I know he is capable of. And Cunha as well has been, I think he's been unfortunate. Again, you could tell there's a very good player there, but Wolves are playing him as a lone striker. I think he's more of a number 10 or maybe an inside forward. So Wolves aren't utilising him correctly. Probably similar again to someone like Havertz at Chelsea. He's a good player, but definitely not as a number 9. It's just so unbalanced at the moment. That's the word I've used all season, really. We've got some great players, but on paper we've got some great players, but the squad just isn't balanced enough for us to, get any sort of consistency. And Lopetegui just hasn't picked the same 11 consecutively. He's changing the team all the time, and obviously he's going to have to do that again with Neves out.
Well, just on the balance and stuff. I mean, you look at the squads there. I mean, what have you made of Wolves' recruitment sort of in the summer and in January? Do you think it's been good enough? Do you think it's addressed the right areas? Do you think it's held you back at all? I mean, how do you feel about the recruitment that's happened this season?
I think they've obviously got money and they've spent the money, but for Wolves, we've been crying out properly for an actual number 9 ever since Jimenez's injury. They just, to be fair, it's ever since we got promoted to the Premier League, because outside of Jimenez, we never had a striker. And we were very, very fortunate that he stayed fit for sort of 2 years going into the Europa League and so on. We brought Fabio Silva in, who was almost meant to be that understudy. So when Jimenez were playing, Fabio Silva would get like a handful of minutes every so often. And then Jimenez got that major injury, and we're in a spot of bother. And again, last year we never addressed it. And what Wolves' issue is, I think they're trying to add quality in the wide areas for other players to chip in the goals. So that's why you've seen Cunha been spent on, Guedes, who's obviously not even at the club anymore. They're hoping to get more out of Adama, Neto, Bedence, and so on. But that's what Wolves need, a number 9. And I think we'll really regret it at the end of the season if we do go down. But that's something that's got to be addressed. But they've still got the right intention. They're still spending the money. But I suppose it's similar to sort of your January window or summer window where they're just throwing money at everything, hoping something works. Where I think it just needs a little bit more thought behind it, really.
Yeah, no, for sure. I can relate to that. I mean, I think we perhaps got a little bit more thought behind it. I'd like to think, but a lot of players have come in. All of them aren't going to work out. That's just the way football goes.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, it's great to have the money and the intention there, but you do have to get it right. You can't just chuck it at anyone and hope for the best. But I mean, just wanted to touch on one player. Fan favourite at Chelsea, done fantastic for us, fired us to 2 Premier League titles. He's at Wolves now, Diego Costa. Obviously, he came in, I believe, on a season. It's just a deal for the season, was it? A 1-year deal? How's he been viewed? Obviously, when he came back to Stamford Bridge in that game earlier in the season, got a fantastic reception from the Chelsea fans. I mean, what are the Wolves fans' view of him? Because I think he's got himself sent off at Brentford, I think, for a headbutt. He's got that in. He's got that in his locker. He's quite a fiery character, but I mean, from what I've noticed, he's not scored that many goals, has he?
I don't think he's scored a single goal yet for us. But to be fair to him, he's not really had the minutes. Or if he comes on, it's when we're chasing a game. He's brought a little bit. I'm not going to say he's made a huge difference. I think, but he was quite unfortunate because Bruno Lage brought him in and then was sacked about a week or so later. We needed a striker anyway because Jimenez, fitness-wise, was gone. Fabio Silva was out on loan. We just signed a guy called Sasha Kalajdzic from Stuttgart, and he did his ACL on his debut, so we didn't have a striker. So we had a little bit of bad luck there. But Costa came in, had a bit of a nightmare with his work permit, and he's been all right. There's been certain games, like the Southampton game a month or so ago, we went down to 10 men. He came on second half and he caused them all sorts of problems, and we went on to win the game 2-1. And I think he knows, or he tries to bend the rules a little bit. The Brentford one, I don't know what he was doing. Obviously got the red card, but no, I don't think he'll be here beyond this summer, to be honest, mate. But I just want him to score a goal. I think it'd be nice for him to get on the score sheet at least once, so he's not a complete flop at the club.
Yeah, he needs to notch at least one because he has been such a good player throughout his career and he's scored. I mean, I've enjoyed a lot of goals that he's scored. But yeah, it would be nice to see him get one for sure. I mean, something that not many people might know is that I think you told me yesterday when we done the preview on your channel that Enzo Fernandez, if things had gone a little bit differently, could have been playing in a Wolves shirt tomorrow. I mean, how close was that move to happening?
Well, it was a strange one, really. We did a lot of it. Wolves did a lot of extensive scouting in South America last season, and he was one of the main players Wolves looked at. And it was us and Benfica both had bids on the line, but River Plate was still in the Copa Libertadores, like their Champions League at the time. And River Plate basically, or I don't know if it was River Plate or Enzo Fernandez, basically said, "I don't want to leave the club until that campaign is finished." But that campaign could have gone up to December, so you wouldn't have got him till January. So Wolves pulled out of it and said, "No, we don't want to wait for the player." And then a week later, they were knocked out, and Benfica signed him. So it was a bit obviously stupid from Wolves, and that was for, like I said, about 15-20 million pounds, I think. So obviously had an amazing 6 months, won the World Cup, and obviously the rest is history, joining Chelsea for a substantial fee.
Yeah, he has been fantastic. He's been superb for us since he's come in. Just to round this one out, mate. What have been your thoughts on Chelsea this season? I'm always interested to get like an outsider's perspective. It's been a bit of a mess, to say the least. I mean, Chelsea is chaos. It normally is most seasons. But how have you viewed what's gone on at the club this season?
I think I brought it with you a couple of times yesterday. I think the squad there is strong, and I think some of the signings that have come in, are good signings. João Felix is a player I really rate highly. I think it will work out for a number of players. Enzo, who we've already spoken about. So I think European football, or getting into European football, probably shouldn't be the priority for Chelsea this season. If they can get a top manager next year, treat it as a transitional season, balance out the squad in the summer and try and get that squad settled and then go for it. Because I think the foundations are there for a really, really good squad. And I think the chairman, who obviously is throwing a lot of money at it, has got the right intentions. But I suppose the Tuchel sacking, I know I don't know, sort of the Chelsea point of view, probably was a little bit too early. And obviously the whole thing with Graham Potter, I think it was probably a jump too much too quickly for him. And like I said to you yesterday, I think he's got a place in the Premier League, but not at a top club right now. So I don't know. Chelsea might shock us and do quite well in the Champions League, and I think European football isn't in the Premier League isn't completely out of the question, but they need a really good ending to the campaign to do it. But I think it's got to write this season off. I know it's been disappointed, but I think they'll be absolutely fine in the next few years.
Yeah, as you say, I think spot on in terms of the foundations are there for the long term. We've kind of had to sacrifice this season. We've still got the Champions League to play for. Never say never in that. The 2 times we've won it have been very unexpected. So who's to say we can't do it a third time with Frank? Final thing, mate, score prediction for the game tomorrow. What are you going for?
I think it's going to be a really close game. I'd love Wolves to win, but I think my head is saying a 0-0 draw. No, my heart is saying a 0-0 draw. I'd take a point, but my head is probably saying a 1-0 Chelsea win. I think Chelsea will just edge it. I
mean, I'd certainly take that. I'll be honest, I'm not sure how much of an impact Lampard's going to make in such a short space of time. I'll probably go for a 1-1 draw. But Dave, thanks for joining me, mate. Pleasure to have you on. If people want to check out more of your stuff and what you do, where's the best place for them to head?
Yeah, so it's Talking Wolves. We're everywhere: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and obviously YouTube. We do our match reviews and reactions. So obviously you can see my reaction after the game tomorrow, or on my personal Twitter, which is just at Dave as a party, like you see on the screen there.
Perfect, guys. I'll link all that in the description below, so make sure you do check that out. Please do smash likes on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you again in another video soon.